Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're talking about the East African nation of Burundi, where the president insists he has the right to run for a third term. No, say protesters who have been, once again this Tuesday, hit by live ammunition from police. With us to talk about it from Bujumbura, Willy Nyamite, special advisor to the president. Also in the capital, activist Chris Nsambiyumva of the non-governmental organization Sakode. Photojournalist Teddy Mazina, who was in those protests earlier this Tuesday. And Olivier Cazelin, of journalist with the French, I say the French magazine Jeune Afrique. Is it French? Because it's Pan-African. There you go. Pan-African magazine Jeune Afrique. Just before the break, we were talking about these constitutional issues, about whether or not the president himself can run again. Rwanda's president has been outspoken. Paul Kagame last week saying, if the citizens of your own country say they do not want you, how can you say I'm staying whether they want me or not? Those are the words of Rwanda's president. Willy Nyamitwe, your reaction to Paul Kagame's words?
Thank you. What we have to know is what Paul Kagame has said is normal, is the truth. When your citizens say they don't want you, then you cannot run. But how can you know that the citizens don't want you? It's throughout elections. So we have to go to elections to know if the citizens of Burundi don't want Pierre Nkurunziza as their president. But what we are seeing now is around 1,000 or 2,000 people who are protesting in the streets. So how can we say that 2,000 persons can represent more than 10 millions of Burundians? How can we say that 2,000 persons from the opposition can replace the decision taken by the ruling party that has amongst it more than 3 millions of persons who have the age of vote?
And how do you feel? Sorry, how do you feel, Willie? How do you feel when you hear the strong statements both from the Rwandan president and his foreign minister?
Yeah, the foreign minister, what she has said is normal. We have to interpret it positively. She said that it's the international community and the region responsibility to come and see what's happening. Because what happened here in Burundi, when people are in the streets, barricading roads, taking in hostage some citizens, avoiding people to go to school, even the kids, using the kids into this contestation. So what she said, while people are fleeing the country, going into Rwanda, DRC, and Tanzania, this means that the region has to come out and help. This means that the international community has to come and help because dealing with these refugees needs some financial needs, some equipment. So what we have to say, what we have to emphasize is that now there's a summit in Dar es Salaam. This summit is a response to this call. The call from the
summit that takes place Wednesday.
Minister of Foreign Affairs of Rwanda, and the call from President Pierre Nkurunziza, who urged the international community, the US, the United Nations, the EU, the AU, and the region to help Burundi before, during, and after elections.
Chris Nsambiyumva, your reaction?
Well, my reaction to the statements from President Kagame?
Yes.
Well, he has a point that it's quite, if the people don't want you, why would you seek to run again? But there I'm actually going to agree with Willie on one point. If people don't want you, they should show that to you in elections. But the issue here in Burundi is that the guy who wants to run for elections again isn't allowed to do so by the law, by the fundamental law, which is the Constitution. So that's one thing. That's one thing we have to deal with first. It's our Constitution. It's not just something that's there. It's the fundamental law of our country. We have to stand up when we feel like it's being violated. And that's what's happening today. And sorry, I'm kind of losing track. And then he mentioned something about it being just 2,000 people demonstrating in the whole country. Okay, if it's just 2,000 people, why has the consequences of the demonstrations why have the consequences been so great in terms of revenue collected by the state? Last month, the Revenue Authority actually collected 18% less than the target. Why is it that there are 50,000 people that have fled the country, and they have fled from outside the capital of Bujumbura? Why is that? Why is it that the government decided to switch off radio stations in the city if they felt that just the 2,000 people that are protesting mean nothing? Why is that? Didn't they feel that there was a certain sentiment of that it was going to spread out? It was going to spread out because even the neighborhoods that the protest started last 2 weeks ago, they've spread out to wider areas of the country and the country. So really, it's not about the numbers, it's about the message we're trying to convey.
All right, and both Willie and Chris pointing out that there have been thousands of people who've crossed the border into neighboring states. It's not an ethnic conflict, but just in case, many of those crossing the border into Rwanda.
There are always problems on the way. When you leave your house, it is always the thing that you need most that you can't take. For example, you cannot take a cow with you. Even if you have some savings in an account, you have no time to take it. We suffer because we have nothing. We left without anything.
As refugees, UNHCR should take us somewhere else because we're close to the border with Burundi here. The enemies we're running away from can find us here and harm us.
Teddy Mazzina, why are all those people fleeing? Why are they scared?
People are scared because the country we had 10 years of young democracy. We had 10 years, and we've seen this democracy, this heritage from the Arusha agreements, which is inherited from Nelson Mandela, if you want, changing progressively as we were approaching the end of this second term of the president. And people are scared because we had militias all over. We had rumors, a lot of rumors, as the government says, but sometimes it's proved that's true. We had inside the country, we had decentralization of despotism, if you want, local leaders or local responsible administration treating people not as they should, and there's a kind of oppression inside the country. People can't say what they want, and as the elections are approaching, people are scared of what can happen. They have been living in violence before. You had these militia, which is called Imbonerakure, which is a reality in the country, which have been said in several reports. And people are fleeing the country because they don't want to die. You have rumors of the presence of some people coming from the Congo, from the FDLR. It's still rumors. It can be proved tomorrow. You had traffic of guns, distribution of guns alleged by even international community. So people are scared. People hear what the politicians and what the local political responsibles says to them. So they go, they leave. They will say Rwanda is next door, so they go there and they will come back when it's over. That's it.
Olivier Cazelin?
About the rumors? Yeah, that's true. A lot of rumors are going through Burundi and through Bujumbura in the last months, even in the last months. And of course, it doesn't help to keep a very, very quiet country. I understand, and people are pretty upset because they don't want the President Nkurunziza the way he's running now. But I'm still coming back with what I said before, and I think it's a pity that people can't negotiate. I agree with my friend from Burundi when he said there's nothing to negotiate, but it would be the worst thing would be to see people going to fight each other more and more, and to put the country going back to war as it was 15 or 20 years ago. That's maybe the point of negotiating sometimes.
And Olivier, explain something to me again that you alluded to a little bit earlier here. They're going to be sitting down in Tanzania for this regional summit on Wednesday. You're going to have the president of Rwanda, who's critical of the president of Burundi for not stepping aside. Yet the president of Rwanda himself is thinking of doing away with term limits and running again.
Yeah, that's why I was mentioning the test before, because it would be a test for everyone, and for Paul Kagame maybe first row. And nobody knows at that stage what Paul Kagame will do for the next election. But yeah, it's pretty... I understand that Rwanda has to stand very, very strongly on this position, because it's, of course, in the first row close to Burundi. So it's very, very concerned, even more because you've got the thousands of Burundians, Tutsi Burundians, going to find their place and to save their life in Rwanda. So I understand that the president is very, very concerned and want to make his point, but I don't know if he's the right man to do that.
All right. Other people making their point are the West. We saw nations such as former colonial power Belgium that have pulled back on some of their aid. We've also had very strong words from the United States. A few days ago, there was U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry saying Nkurunziza's decision to run again, quote, flies in the face of the Constitution, a sentiment echoed on Monday by the U.S. ambassador to Burundi, speaking in Bujumbura.
Too many have lost their lives already. The reports of closure of radio stations and blocking of social media have only increased the instability and violence. Any intimidation of local or international media is not acceptable and is contrary to democratic process. The United States remains concerned about the treatment of prisoners detained during these protests.
Willie Nyamitwe, your reaction, and also why have radio stations been closed down?
Thank you, but my line was dropped off. I don't know if my point has been listened, but the first thing to say is that some radio stations were spreading rumors. One of them has been shut down, and people were spreading rumors using social media such as WhatsApp, Viber, and Facebook. And the government, as a responsible government, had to shut down those social media in order to stop these people who were fleeing the country. You go to Rwanda, you go to Tanzania, you go to DRC Congo, you ask those people, or any one of them has been wounded, and none of them can tell you that his house has been destroyed or a father or a brother has been killed. So people are fleeing because of rumors that are spread by some medias here and some journalists and some people who are not responsible who think that people has to go. But this is
Willie,
not
what
a new
do you say when we heard the U.S. ambassador saying that when you shut down social media and radio stations, you're only increasing the instability and the violence?
This is what she thinks, but the government has taken this decision because we saw that people were fleeing because of rumors, and some of them were broadcasted by some radio stations here. I'm going to give you an example. A radio station has broadcasted that in the north, near the border of Rwanda, a priest was digging graves in order to bury some Tutsi, and people were afraid. But people are afraid of what they are hearing, and some of them went outside and are coming back. I can say that we have around 5,000 people who are coming back home, and they found their property intact. So there is another rumor, this one of Imbonerakure. Mr. Teddy said it's a militia. Everybody is saying we have a militia in the country. We've got some journalists coming from all the parts of the world. They've been looking for those militias. They found no evidence. How can people continue spreading such rumors? In Imbonerakure, it's a youth wing from the CNDD-FDD party. But we have to stop this globalization, because globalization has brought in our country a lot of problems. In 1994, 1995, it was Hutus and Tutsis. Anyone who committed a crime, they said it's a Hutu or it's a Tutsi. And now, if there is a problem between two persons, one of them is going to be in Imbonerakure, another one is a citizen. I'm saying let's stop this globalization because it's only false information that are spread in order to destabilize this country.
Chris in Sabayumva, analysts saying that so far the good news is that there are Hutus and Tutsis on both sides of the argument, that it is not an ethnic conflict so far. Could it become one?
I don't think so. And I'd just like to, before I answer the question, I'd just like to come back to something that the advisor to the president just said. He said that no evidence has been found that Imbonerakure are militia, but actually today in the offices of the CNDD-FDD in Buterere, 2 guns were found in the offices of the CNDD-FDD. That clears the point. And there's actually many officials. Last week, the administrator of Kanyosha, who is a CNDD-FDD partisan, was seen throwing grenades at protesters. So those are just examples to really say that the Imbonerakure thing isn't just rumors.
This has to be...
Anyway.
We have to check. We have to check to be sure that this is true.
Anyway, let me answer the question. I don't think there's an ethnic aspect to it because, like you said, there's, like I said earlier even, it's Hutus and Tutsis and Twas and even foreigners who live in Burundi protesting against the third term. It's just that in the beginning of the protests began in neighborhoods that are predominantly Tutsi and actually predominantly MSD, which is an opposition party. Some people try to use that as an argument to say that we're going back to Hutu-Tutsi issues, which is new. The FNL are against the third term. There's many parties, and it's not just opposition. There's civil society people, and people don't belong to any party or to any civil society organization who are protesting against the third term. And they're Hutu, they're Tutsi, they're Twa, and they're from many origins.
Teddy Mazina, you agree?
Let me...
Yes, I do agree with what he said. What is, I can say, pleasing for me, the first impressive thing that I see when I walk the areas where people are demonstrating is that it's the same areas we lived in the years of war where we had ethnic conflict, and now people are together. Now people demonstrate together. Now people help each other. And this is a victory for the people and for Burundi. The problem is... but people, excuse me?
Go ahead, Teddy.
But give me the floor because
first Teddy, then Willie. We will give you the floor,
The problem is that Willie is trying to ignore the reality now. People are educated. The radios, those rumors that he's talking about was most of the time investigation of RPA. RPA has been investigating and accusing members, generals, and people who are responsible in the government of corruption, of killings, of whatever. There's so many cases that RPA have talked about. RPA was a problem. This the most popular radio in Burundi was a big problem for the government. Now I can tell you, journalists, my colleague journalists, don't sleep in their places. They're hiding. They found themselves in clandestinity. So how can we talk about democracy in that situation? How everybody they call you, some people are scared of being killed by members of the government. On the other side, those Imbonerakure that we talked about, it's not all the Imbonerakure who are members of militia, but there is a real branch of ex-combatants, of new combatants, of people who have been formed in the Congo, who are really dangerous, who behave like a militia, and who are prepared to go against the demonstrators. And I'm not talking about 2,000 demonstrators. For the journalists who are in Burundi, you can ask them, there's thousands and thousands of people demonstrating, and in some areas of country it's starting, and some cars have been burned out of Bujumbura yesterday. So you have the government has to see what is going on and manage with it. I agree with negotiations. I agree with whatever can solve the problem, not to put the country again in trouble. But I don't, myself, not as a journalist, I don't think that this third term was the best idea that we could have now.
Willie Nyamitwe.
We have to know that when we are talking about the rights and freedoms of individuals, we have to know that we need to respect others' views. How can he say that cars are burned? You cannot be burning cars of people who are from the ruling party and say that this is a peaceful demonstration. Another thing to say, this FDLR, this Interahamwe they are talking about, or Imbonerakure, how far have we been? We have been saying that we have FDLR here because I know this bad narrative has been brought in order to create a conflict between Burundi and Rwanda. But so far, we found someone who has been beaten, and this was a citizen from France. Another one was a citizen from Uganda, and this has been beaten by some demonstrators. How can you say, when we are bringing this bad narrative in order to create a conflict between Burundi and Rwanda, saying that we have FDLR in the country, and we find no evidence? If one person comes and throws a grenade to policemen, this person is not in Imbonerakure, it's a protester, he is arrested, but no one is going to talk about it. But when someone is from a Hutu ethnic group, for example, when he's caught, he can be either from Frodebu, from FNL, but they are going to say it's an Imbonerakure.
All right,
these protesters wanted to bring in this ethnic aspect, but
disagreement on that point.
Party, no one went into this ethnic aspect or way. We continued to protect the citizens, and the policemen are doing their job. I want to say that to burn cars, to destroy houses, to barricade roads, to use children, and to give drugs to some young guys that are barricading roads and avoiding people to go to their work, it means this is not normal, and this is very bad. But,
all right, so it's not a normal situation. Willy Nyamitwe, just one final point. I want to bring it up with Olivier Caslan. Olivier, Africa, 54 nations. Burundi's just one of them. Mm-hmm. But we have seen people watching this closely throughout the continent because of what we saw last October in Burkina Faso, where there was this pushing out of the longtime president. Mm-hmm. We saw recently with Nigeria, where there was an election where the ruling party lost. With what happened in what's happening in Burundi, it's a familiar story to many on the continent.
Yeah, it is not as familiar as people think in Europe, because it's pretty exceptional to see people going into the street in Africa in general. That was pretty exceptional in Burkina, and it's still very exceptional in Burundi. Everything started, I would say, from the mid-February, when the release of Bob Rugurika put thousands of people in the street, and I have the feeling that the Burundians from that day are not afraid to go and to demonstrate anymore in the street. And that was maybe a point that the President Nkurunziza didn't think he had to think about during the election. He was pretty confident about the fact that he had the population of the whole country behind him. It seems today that it's a little bit more difficult, more complicated than that. Burundians are demonstrating against the president, and so we should take that as a conclusion. What we didn't talk about it still until now, but there is a very interesting point, is the fact you were mentioning Burkina Faso. So far, the army in Burundi hasn't done anything. She hasn't.
The army stayed out of it,
yeah,
and
exactly.
It's the neutral arbiter for now. And we'll see how it plays out.
And I would say that would be the key of the next weeks. Yeah.
All right, Olivier Caslan, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Willy Nyamitwe for being with us from Bujumbura, as well as Chris Nyabesumva and Teddy Mazina. Thank you all for joining us for this discussion. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we're joined by Emma James.
Hi there. Yes, talking about Burundi, of course, which we have been for the past hour, taking a look at Nigeria's Guardian newspaper, some of the reactions are a little closer to home, because, of course, this is now attracting global attention. But looking at this article, they say Nkurunziza joins the League of Africa's sit-tight leaders. They talk about the fact that these avoidable constitutional dilemmas, they call them, are caused by leaders who can't imagine the country going on without them. And they list the African countries who've had the same head of state for the last 15 years. And the dubious honour of the longest-serving head of state in Africa is Equatorial Guinea's president, who's been there for 35 years. So really this is quite an issue for Africa, the fact that these leaders get into power and then don't want to move. Now, the human tragedy of this crisis is really spelled out in this Vox article. They talk about the fact that a man was lynched by protesters. He had tires put around his neck, which would then set on fire. This is the kind of thing that is happening on the streets in Burundi. They said that apparently, according to witnesses, he was the member of a pro-government youth group that they say had been targeting protesters, and that's why they did what they did.
We were talking about earlier how rumors fly and afterwards it all spins out of control.
Absolutely. Now, according to this article, 50,000 people have fled the country. The election, of course, itself is still weeks away. But there are some really shocking images in this article, including this one, which shows a gentleman who was hiding from a mob, believing that he was about to be murdered. Now, the UN Refugee Agency has also tweeted these images from Tanzania, where they're trying to help move some 10,000 people from Burundi. Amazing images there. Clearly, the infrastructure isn't there to cope with that scenario. Elsewhere, staying with the UN Refugee Agency, they give an account of a 12-year-old boy who fled Burundi. He went by bus and by bicycle, became separated from his mother. It's a terrible tale, really, that shows how much impact there is on the individuals living in Burundi.
All right, many thanks for that, Emma James. And of course, we're going to continue to follow this story both here and our website, France24.com. Stay with us, there's more to come.